disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Being a fantastic day so far. So, Dr. Cornell West, I'm sure everybody's heard about him. He's done amazing work. It's enjoyable to listen to him, and I do enjoy the speeches that he's made. Is obviously running for presidency. He announced he was running in the People's Party originally. Now he's going towards the Green Party, and is continuing to make strides to being basically the alternative voice outside the duopoly. We've seen, a rise with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but having Cornell West also there is kind of pushing people away from this dystopian duopoly that is used to oppress people, and getting away from the cult of the Republicans and the Democrats to focus more on focus on more independency and focus on real humanitarian issues like, the environment and the economy, and how we need to have sustainable jobs, how we need to focus more on union-based jobs, how we need to make cost of living down, all this stuff that would affect every single person regardless of race and creed and background. That is what Cornell West is trying to get towards when it comes to this presidential campaign. So I just want to show some clips here, because as Cornell West is continuing to make strides within the political decorum, is when he was the individual that exposed who Obama really was. And people at first, 2008, having the first black president, it was this miraculous thing. I got swept in with it because, I didn't know at the time. I was only, I think, maybe 11 or 12. 2008, or maybe 13. I think it was 13 when he got elected in, and I just, first black president. Cool. That's awesome. That's definitely a step forward. But now, because of the 8 years of Obama, and then people voting for Trump because they had the 8 years of Obama, and just seeing the decay and the false promises and the complete obliteration to Obama's commitment of hope and change, just completely annihilated that, to being the face of Wall Street, to being the moderate Republican that he even said to an interviewer. It's just more prevalent. And here's Cornell West. This is on Democracy Now! Back when Democracy Now! Was actually worth watching. Because now it's just a complete psyops of the war machine and neoliberal establishment. Here's what he used to say about comparing President Barack Obama back in the day to Richard Nixon. And I was always told that Richard Nixon was like this evil, nefarious, like he was supposed to be worse than Trump. And maybe criminally with Watergate, but here's this. This is something interesting.
I'm glad there was not a right-wing takeover, but we end up with a Republican, a Rockefeller Republican and BlackFace with Barack Obama, so that our struggle in regard to poverty intensifies.
That's a pretty rough assessment of President Obama.
Oh, that's what we have. That's what we have. Richard Nixon is to the left of him on health care. Richard Nixon's to the left of him on guaranteed income. And the same policies in terms of imperial foreign policy is at work.
Isn't that interesting? Richard Nixon was to the left of the first black president. Like, even Amy Goodman sitting there going like, that's a pretty harsh assessment. I mean, gotta admit, he's for the hope and change. What are you saying about that? And Cornell West is spot on about it. And also the fact that the EPA and Earth Day, concern for the environment, started under Richard Nixon. And that Barack Obama, who was supposed to be this Mr. Environmental Scientist, he cared so much about climate change and we need to get greener and better as a society, did the most drilling. He was the oil king under his reign. So Cornell West is definitely spot on when he says that he's a Rockefeller Republican in blackface. And that's exactly who he is and exposed himself as. And that's what the Democratic Party has turned itself to be. They're a bunch of Rockefeller banker-like Republicans in identity clothes. They're okay with, transgender, and they care about the LGBTQ and abortion rights. But everything else is Republican. Everything else is pro-Wall Street. Everything else is pro-war. Everything else is against the working class people. And when you have even Chuck Schumer, who was the head of the Democratic Senate, saying in an interview that if you don't pick up, if you don't pick up the blue collar workers, it's okay. It's okay because we'll go to the cul-de-sacs with the multimillionaires and pick up the white collar Republicans. This is your political establishment, ladies and gentlemen. That this is why Cornell West is running this campaign, is to break away from this duopoly, because the duopoly, it may look like you have two options, but you don't. You have no option. Because whether it's Democrat or Republican, no matter who's in office, you have no way to vote out against war. You have no way to vote out against Wall Street. You have no way to vote out corruption. You have no way to vote for peace and sanity. You have none of it. It's just going to be occupied control by the highest bidder, and it's going to be used to oppress the masses. And he is definitely spot on about this. And this is back, I think this is back in 2010, I do believe, that he was saying this. And then this also came around. So CNN, when Cornell West was exposing more about Barack Obama and reminding us of who he actually is, CNN had a story about this, trying to slam Cornell West and saying that he was a maniac kook. But here's what Cornell West said that made it so prevalent right now.
As you well know, African Americans overwhelmingly support President Obama. There's no question about it. 95% voting for him. But there are some African Americans who believe that President Obama hasn't done enough for the poor and working class. And activist Cornell West had a stinging critique of the president. January 2008 in South Carolina. Democratic candidates prepared to debate.
Y'all stay strong, though.
Princeton University professor Cornell West strongly endorsed then Senator Barack Obama.
I think he's got the vision, he's got the newness, he's got the freshness.
Fast forward to this week, West is now strongly criticizing President Obama, calling him, quote, a black puppet and black mascot of Wall Street.
Well, when I look at the mass unemployment, mass underemployment, mass incarceration, especially in the black community, but I'm talking about poor and working people across the board, it seems to have a very low priority. It seems to be an afterthought. That's what I mean.
I mean, was there any wrong that he said that? Is there anything that needs to be retracted there? Because he was Cornell West is spot on about this. Barack Obama deregulated more of Wall Street, kicked 5.1 million families out of their homes during the financial crisis, and incarcerated more people and kicked out more immigrants. There was more immigrants getting kicked out of the country under Obama than there was with Donald Trump. And people thought Trump was more the maniac. Trump was more harsher to people coming into the country. Barack Obama built the cages that were keeping kids detained while they separated from their parents. He is spot on about this, and there's nothing to be proven. There's no wrong to this.
Mean when I say one becomes a puppet for corporate plutocrats and a mascot for Wall Street oligarchs.
West tells truthdig.com, quote, I think my dear brother Barack Obama has a certain fear of black men. It's understandable. As a young brother who grows up in a white context, brilliant African father, he's always had to fear being a white man with black skin. I asked West what he meant.
I don't think he has a fear of black men. I think he has a certain distance from free black men who are willing to speak the truth, both about America and about himself.
West's comments are outright inflammatory, but he admits he has a personal issue with Mr. Obama. He says he campaigned for Mr. Obama but never got a thanks and couldn't get tickets to the inauguration. But West says he doesn't want that to distract from a larger message that black people are being left behind, even under a black president. The issue is there, says Politico's Carrie Budoff-Brown.
And that, I think, scratches at a very real disappointment that exists right now in the liberal base, the base of the Democratic Party, towards the president, that he is not or has not been the strong progressive that they imagined he would be.
President Obama, while campaigning on a message of change, has surrounded himself with old Washington hands. And the unemployment rate for African Americans is 16%. We asked the White House to comment, but they declined. But Obama's supporters say, sure, it's easy for outsiders to criticize the president. Roland Martin says the president isn't a professor or a social activist, and he does have multiple constituencies.
Is he black enough? Is he Christian enough? Is he, what is it? And so to me, that is a waste of time.
I love how they took this and did a complete complete spin to this. What Cornell West is talking about is the actual fundamentals of his campaign. That's what he's critiquing about. Because he was running to be the hope and change leader. He was running to be the progressive candidate. Just like how Bernie Sanders ran a progressive campaign, just like how AOC ran a progressive campaign, just like how Donald Trump was supposed to be this populist that was going to save America and bring America back together again. He was supposed to cultivate everybody so that we can fix it for the better good. That was all complete false. Those are all complete fronts. Because once they get into office, they get easily corrupted. And then they become puppets. Donald Trump was a puppet to the establishment, even though the establishment hates his guts and tried to take him down, and he's a wild card for that. That's why they're after him, is because he might say something truthful. But Donald Trump is no different from the establishment. Same with AOC, same with Bernie Sanders, same with Barack Obama. When you're in that cult, when you're in that reign, you are going to get devoured and eaten up and turned into this puppet. But what the CNN contributor, this Roland Martin, I love how they just turn it into a complete different subject. Well, is he not black enough? Is he not Christian? That's not what he's talking about. That's not what people are talking about. I don't think people really care what his faith is or what ethnicity is. There might be some people, but that's not the major priority at this point.
But I think what also has to be recognized is that you're dealing with somebody who is a politician, who has a much different role and responsibility.
Now, administration supporters say the president hasn't just ignored the plight of the poor and the working families, and they highlight some of the accomplishments of the administration, from reforming Wall Street to the health care law to the Ledbetter Act that gave equal pay to men.
Yes, all complete corporate takeovers of those policies. You know, the Obamacare Act, the ACA, that was basically a right-wing ploy to add more control by the corporations. How they reformed Wall Street to make it less about people. How they try to monopolize that. How they, broke Glass-Steagall. How they completely obliterated ordinary people. Like those kind of accomplishments. So, even back then, Cornell West was definitely spot on who these figures really are. And if you don't believe what Cornell West is saying, then take it from the horse's mouth itself. When he even announced in an interview that he's a Republican. And that's what Democrats are. They're basically a lighthearted Republican. They care about, gay rights and identity politics, and they care about abortion rights, and maybe say the right words when it comes to healthcare and education. But when it comes to action, they couldn't care less. They could not care less.
The truth of the matter is that my policies are so mainstream that, if If I had said the same policies that I have back in the 1980s, I'd be considered a moderate Republican. I'd be considered a moderate Republican, a moderate Republican, a moderate Republican.
Just like Cornell West told us. And that's when he admitted out of office. Because now that he served his term, now that he got his finances from investors and lobbyists and have become completely corrupted and now living in Martha's Vineyard, now that he's able to just be a man, be himself again, yeah, he could just come forward and be like, yeah, I was a moderate Republican. All that stuff I said about working class people, I was going to reform and change things, yeah, that was just all for show. That was all to suck you people in. Suck you into this plutocrat cult, this political cult, that people still think that, you know, these establishment parties are going to help you and benefit you. And if we go against the other guy, then that's definitely a victory for everybody. And the same can be said about the Republicans, because they're no picnic either. You're basically got two sides of the same coin, two sides of the same bird. They could not care less about you or any blue-collar person or any ordinary working individual in the country. They have scammed you out. And that's why people like Cornell West running his campaign is so important. And having, you know, a different voice, having an alternative away from the duopoly is so vital at these times. So much vital that they're trying to silence him even more. They're trying to silence out Cornell West, the same that they're doing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Because having an alternative voice, having a voice of reason outside a different perspective, outside the establishment, outside the status quo box, outside the cult, is dangerous. It's dangerous to the establishment that we know more about the establishment. Because knowledge is power, and when we have more power, we can rise against the establishment. So, of course, they got to take that away from the regular people and misinform us and brainwash us and propagandize us with, you know, those CNN clips of like, well, you can't criticize him for, you know, is he not black enough? Is he not Christian enough? No, that's not what people were critiquing about. That's not what Cornell West was attacking him for. He was attacking him for his failed policies, which is what every single person should be doing to their representatives. He should be harshly going against them, critiquing their policies. If they campaigned for it and you vote them into office, they have a responsibility to follow through on their plans, follow through on their campaigns. And if they continue to drop the ball and continue to oppress you, then you have to show it to them. You have to show that they are failing the people that voted you in. That's what a healthy democracy is all about, folks. And having pure representation that can actually represent and actually get things moving. Instead of the cowards that we have right now, like Bernie and AOC and the Squad and other individuals. In fact, the most people I've seen actually get things going forward are right-wingers like Matt Gaetz and Lohan Bobart. I don't agree with them. I don't support them in any way, but they're definitely flexing their power of trying to actually get what they campaigned on moving forward, because you're not seeing it from any other politician out there.